Welcome back to the Around the League podcast, and we are rolling along with the NFC South, and I've got our guy, Tommy McGuire, our resident Panthers fan. Check him out at the Panther Up Podcast. Tommy, how's it going, man?
Good, Cody. What's going on?
Dude, thanks for jumping on. I'm from North Carolina, so it's always fun to talk Carolina Panthers and everything. Tell me a little bit, kind of just how you became a Panthers fan and everything. I know you're up there in the New York region. So before we kind of roll into these notes, can you tell me just a little bit about that?
So I'm actually born and raised up in New York. My dad, growing up, my dad was a huge Buffalo Bills fan. However, when I was around maybe younger, 2 or 3 years old, it's probably around when the Panthers first came out in '95. So they had a bunch of apparel up here, up everywhere, because they were just a new team. And I think my dad ended up just buying me a hat and a shirt around when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I don't think I took that hat off for like 4 or 5 years. And then ever since then, I just started getting more and more gear every year. And then once DirecTV started kicking in with the Sunday ticket in like 2000, 2001, I've pretty much tried to catch every Panther game since. So I can definitely give you the ups and downs of the past 20, 25 years of this Panthers franchise here. So yeah, lifelong fan here from New York, but definitely a diehard Carolina Panthers fan.
I love it. Rooting for Queen City down there. And
Absolutely.
like you said, a lot of ups and downs over the last 20 years, really the duration of the franchise. But
Mhm.
we're going to talk about some of those because Matt Rhule has had several downs thus far. I personally had higher expectations for him coming into the NFL. I think he's got to be on the hot seat after another underperforming season in 2021. And now you've seen Teddy Bridgewater is not it. Darnold isn't it. We're potentially on to Baker. Give me your thoughts on Matt Rhule. Do you think he's on the hot seat this year?
Yeah, I definitely think Matt Rule's on a hot seat. I mean, if you go with Matt Rule's history, you kind of brought him in as this program builder. He did it at Temple and he did it at Baylor. But the big thing is they sucked his first year and they started building a little bit that second year. And the third year was kind of that turnaround here. I'm obviously hoping that that's the case here in Carolina. But the one thing to notice is it's tough to build a program when you're constantly shuffling the most important position. Not to go back on it, but just I think it all kind of went downhill just with the Teddy Bridgewater signing itself back then. I mean, I think with the new coaching staff and Rule, you kind of should have brought in a rookie if you weren't going to go with Cam. But again, I mean, now going into this year, it's going to be if Faker plays, it's going to be a third starting quarterback, and it's kind of just I don't want it to turn into panic mode, but I think Matt Rule knows that he's on the hot seat. He knows he needs to win. This league is about, at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses, program building aside. I know last year he had that ridiculous Jay-Z quote saying it takes 7 years or something, but he doesn't have 7 years. He's got just this year. And I think he needs to improve. I think he needs to light a fire under the team and under himself. So yeah, well, I'm very interested to see.
Yeah, this guy definitely does not have 7 years. And to your point, you're
No.
right to harp on the quarterback part of it. Because as
Yeah.
we look at to 2022, man, I mean, they're projected to just win 5 games again, and they're only favored in 2 this year. We'll get into some measures to look for improvement, but the main thing is, like you said, they chose multiple times to pass on rookie quarterbacks. Yes, they
Mhm.
tried to get aggressive with some other quarterbacks such as Stafford, Wilson, even Watson, but they clearly didn't learn from previous mistakes because even this past offseason, they didn't get aggressive enough. And
Yeah.
they were outbid by other teams. And now here they are in the same exact position with slightly higher upside in Baker than they were over the last couple of years. I think you put it just uh, perfectly when you kind of said it all went downhill with the Teddy signing. In that moment,
Yeah.
they decided that they were going for mediocrity, which
Well, it's almost, when David Tepper, the new owner, came in and bought the team, he almost just viewed it as I want to win now. I want to sell tickets. I want to fill the stands. I want to, go for the Super Bowl. And by doing that, he wasn't, kind of gelling with this whole bringing in a new coach and really getting rid of Cam, Kuechly, Olsen, Khalil, like the whole everyone gone. Kind of wanted to start new, but Tepper, he's been going for these Watsons and Wilsons and all these other guys instead of kind of just what I've been screaming for the past 3 years is I just want a rookie to get behind. I just want to get behind a guy. But yeah, you're right. So we'll see this year. We'll see what we're gonna do. But Yeah, that's kind of my
Do you
opinion.
have hope for Matt Corral?
I do have hope for Matt Corral. I mean, I like him. I like him a lot. I liked him in college. I liked how he played that Senior Bowl game. Even though he got hurt, he was, calling out he wanted to play for his team. I think he's a really good guy to actually learn under Baker. I think they both have very similar, just kind of swagger and about themselves. You definitely learn more under him than under Sam. I don't think him and Sam really have much in common at all. But I could see Matt Corral being a dog, and who knows? I mean, it's interesting though. It is interesting. I really just don't think they know what they're doing with quarterback. I still don't think they know what they're doing because they traded up to get Matt Corral this year in the third round. And then they trade to get Baker. It is interesting considering, Matt Rule's kind of going to win now mode. So I'm not really sure if Matt Corral is going to be his quarterback. If we get to Corral, I don't know if Matt Rhule will be there by the time we get to Corral this year, if that's the case. So, yeah, I mean, but I like him. So,
Yeah, I think at this point they're just desperate. They've got to have someone pop, but Matt Corral's really the only one with some true upside. But anytime you're taking a quarterback in the third or fourth round, I mean, there's a reason they fell there, especially in this past class. So I definitely liked a lot of intangibles on Matt Corral's side. He was in an explosive offense with Lane Kiffin, so there's definitely some potential there. But some other things I want to get into next is a few metrics that I found kind of reading through. On the Carolina Panthers the last couple of years. I typically read through Sports Info Solutions, Pro Football Reference, Warren Sharp's books, some great data and everything in there as well, to just kind of get a feel for some of these teams. And a few things stuck out that I'm looking for in 2022. Number one is this team had a 2-6 record in one-score games. Naturally, that should regress. That's something that in a league built to increase turnover, increase churn every couple of years for teams getting to the playoffs, that should positively regress, you would think, or at least be closer to 500. I do think that they have got to improve on a bottom six efficient offense, and they were also bottom six in early down success rate. The reason that's such an ugly metric is because they were constantly in third and long and they were constantly in a bad position to convert. And that offense continued to look worse and worse. So then you've got Darnold and these other guys in awful situations all the time whenever they were playing much better teams. So from an offensive standpoint, you guys have added a strong offensive tackle. If you can pronounce his name for me, that would be perfect. I just go with Ickham and everything. But they got to shore up that offensive line because they were pressured in 2.5 seconds or less on 25% of dropbacks. That's going to lead to an inefficient offense. So do you think he's going to be able to actually make an impact as a rookie? Do you think they did enough on the offensive side of the ball this offseason?
yeah, so I'll start with the 2-6 one-score record. Just the fact that they had 8 one-score games as a 5-win team as it was, just goes to show once every single year, every game the Panthers are in. I mean, it's almost brutal because of how many times they lose those one-score games. But like you said, yeah, with the NFL turning over a lot, hopefully that record you would think would improve. And like you said, the pressure, the pressure and the dropbacks and all that stuff, and their first down plays. I think a lot of that attributed to, so we had Joe Brady as our offensive coordinator last year. And if you watch most Panther games, the first drive of the game would look glorious every time. And it looked like, you're going to run up and down the field. And a lot of times throughout the game, what I noticed is defense is just adjusted. I mean, like right away, Joe Brady almost seemed that he kind of tried to do that kind of college learn on the fly, adjust during the game. And like, that just doesn't work in the NFL. So that's kind of what I noticed with the Panthers offense is no one was open. I mean, if they after their first drive, the defense knew their routes, they knew what plays they were going to do. So that was a big thing. But again, they also didn't have an offensive line last year. I mean, I usually am not the guy to complain about an offensive line. I really hate when I hear the New York fans love to complain about their offensive lines, but last year was horrible. And so we focused this year was obviously having to improve it. And that was evident when they selected, I go with Icky. Icky's his nickname. So Icky Ekwonu. They went with Icky from NC State, massive left tackle. I'm very excited about him. However, I actually, throughout this training camp now, Matt Rhule and the staff has actually been pointing maybe towards Icky not starting at left tackle and saying, he might have a little bit of a ways to go there. They're actually thinking about going back with last year's third round choice, Brady Christensen. So I think him and Brady could fight it out. I mean, if Icky doesn't start at left tackle, he could easily plug in at left guard. And picking up Bozeman from the Ravens to play center and Austin Corbett from the Rams to play right guard. And you still have Big Taylor Moton at right tackle. So, I mean, it's a solid offensive line, a much better improved offensive line than last year. So if they stay healthy, I got to believe they're going to give a little bit more time to our quarterbacks, whoever's back there. And not to mention number 22 back there could help out anybody who's throwing the ball. So, yeah, I got to believe that McCaffrey not being there, the offensive line being terrible, and some of Joe Brady's play calling really contributed to a lot of our struggles on offense last year. And we improved all those. So hopefully this year will be a lot better.
So you mentioned CMC there. So before we kind of wrap up this Panthers portion of the podcast, kind of what do you expect out of him after only playing 10 games the last couple seasons? Do you think they try to dial back his workload a little bit this year, or just he's had some freak injuries?
Yeah.
You say, hey, screw it. Let's just let him ride.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been freak injuries. I think it's been a little bit of just kind of in his head. I think a little bit of she's been thinking about it too much. And I have argued the past 2 years that if the Panthers were any good at the end of the season or were in any position to make the playoffs, you could have seen him come back and play. He had no surgeries. There was nothing major. They're not going to have him play in the preseason. But other than that, he should be all go. Not like I said, no ACL or anything like that. It was just kind of BS, nicked up injuries, and just put him back out there, see what he's got.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, so you guys kind of had a top 5 finish last year, but you played a much easier schedule of quarterbacks than you're going to play this year. Defensive performance is tough to keep consistent in this league. Take us home, kind of talking about the Panthers defense. Will they be consistent, or is it going to be a tougher road ahead with this schedule?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the defense. Like you said, they were a top 5 defense last year. A big loss is Hassan Reddick is going to be a big loss to the Eagles. However, J.C. Horn, our first round pick from last year, our lockdown corner, who I believe he was hurt, got hurt in week 3 last year. So I think our secondary, honestly, is up there with any other secondary in the league at this point. I've got J.C. Horn back with Dante Jackson signed back. And then between Jeremy Chin, new pickup Xavier Woods, I even think CJ Henderson, who we picked up from the Jags, he was a first round pick, 3 years ago. And I think just with the whole offseason of coaching, he's long, he's young. We have a really talented secondary, and Brian Burns, I think, has to take the step up. I thought he was going to take it last year, but I think he's got to take the step up to be an elite defensive player this year. And Shaq Thompson patrolling the middle, I think he'll have another good year. We need some extra D-line help, maybe bring in one other person, but, we still are very young, got a lot of young guys, drafted a couple other rookies this year to play on the outside. So, yeah, I'm excited. They're still, like I said, they fly around, really young. And hopefully build on what they started last year. So yeah, we'll check it out.
Looking forward to another season down in the Queen City. But I tell you what, let's take this party down to South Florida, where we're going to talk a little bit of Tampa Bay. And I appreciate you sticking around here to talk Tampa Bay with us some. And, it was an offseason for them that started out wild. They've won this division several years in a row since Brady got down there. Now Brady's back, Bowles is at the helm, and they're projected to win the division again. I think that's no surprise considering the state of some of the other teams in the NFC South. What are your thoughts just kind of on Brady sticking around? Is Todd Bowles going to be an improvement over Arians, or is it going to just are you expecting the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not expect the same when it's Tom Brady. Unfortunately, I thought we were finally rid of him when he was gone. Him and Breeze, I was thinking that we were kind of in the clear in the South, but Tom's back. It's tough to expect anything less from him than just going out and dominating. But, like you said, different coach now. I don't know how much that really affects Brady. And I don't think Brady would have come back to any situation that he didn't think was his perfect situation. I think he gets what he kind of wants down there. I'm hoping that he's going to take a step back, but 45 and he's still one of the best players in the league. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
I agree. And you know what? Some key metrics here that's going to stick out on the Tampa Bay side that I thought was very interesting. Last year, they faced the second toughest schedule of defenses, and now they're projected to face the third easiest. And I think that's still a top 7 easiest against opposing pass defenses. Another thing that was really interesting from the 2020 Super Bowl year, where they started out very slow and didn't pick up until the end of the year, and then going into the playoffs, was their increased first down run efficiency. And they did that. They increased that efficiency due to an increase in overall pass rate. And overall, this took them, they were just ranked barely in the top 15 in first down run efficiency and early down success rate and third down conversion rate in 2020. We saw that turn around drastically and then make the run to the Super Bowl. And then last year, we saw kind of them get back to what makes Brady so good, and that's lowering his ADOT from about 10 to 8. And then they took those same metrics I mentioned to the top 3. Average yards to go on third down, their third down conversion rate, and early down success rate all moved into the top 3. And so, to your point about Brady gets what he wants, it seems like he wanted increased efficiency because we know Arians likes the deep ball. So you in hindsight, you kind of look back and everything's hearsay at this point, but you got to wonder if Brady coming back pushed Arians out the door a little bit, or exactly what was going on. But at the end of the day, I think Byron Leftwich is going to be a really good offensive coordinator, potentially head coach in this league. So now you got him and Brady in full control, aka likely Brady. Do you have any thoughts on Byron Leftwich, or do you just think this is all Brady in control now with Arians out of the way?
I mean, Leftwich has been there now for what? He's been there for a while, or at least a couple of years where, I'm sure he knows the system. He knows kind of what he wants, but like we said, it's Tom Brady's team. It's Tom Brady's league at this point. I mean, he's going to do what he wants. He's going to also listen. I mean, that's what makes him so great. He's going to listen if, Leftwich sees something, or, Todd Bowles has anything for him, but, he's pretty much knows what works and what doesn't work at this point. And, but like I said, what makes him great though is he will listen, and he will sit down and make adjustments and find out what's not working. And, he's still going at it and probably watching film every day. So yeah, that's what makes him so tough. So, yeah.
So we saw a little bit of defensive regression from Tampa Bay last year, and a lot of it was because they just had awful injury luck. Who's going to have the better defense this year, Tampa Bay or your Carolina Panthers?
Hey, well, I can't sit here as a Panther podcaster and give you anything else besides Carolina Panthers, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, their defense is nice. I'm a really big fan of Devin White. I think he's an animal. And a couple of their other guys. I really wanted the Panthers to draft Antoine Winfield Jr. when he was coming out as a safety. I think he's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, hopefully we can have a better D than them. That would help if we play them.
So overall, as we kind of wrap up this podcast, we've talked about a couple teams here in the NFC South, Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, both projected to be on both ends of the division. Tommy, what are your expectations realistically out of the Panthers this year, and then also to a point out of the Buccaneers?
Yeah, so when I look at the Panthers schedule, they play 4 out of 5 at home to start the season. And I don't think it's crazy to win. I think there's 4 winnable games out of those 5 games. And even at the back end of the schedule, the last 5 games, you could argue that there's 3 or 4 winnable games there. So it's really going to come down to that meat of the schedule. Realistically, after 5 wins last year, I'd like to improve. I'd like to make the playoffs as a fringe wildcard team. That's my, I guess, expectations. You never know with the Panthers. I'm going to give us, I don't even know how many games are left in the season anymore. I'm going to give us, I'll go 9-8 for us. I'll give us a Baker Mayfield led 9-8. Hopefully that squeaks into the playoffs. That's my prediction for the Panthers.
That would actually be probably a huge success considering the last couple of years with Rhule in the hot seat he's on. And the NFC really isn't that strong up top.
No, I don't think
at all.
And I think you can argue that. You can argue this. The Falcons. You could argue our division. The Falcons what are the Falcons? And we played the Saints with Jameis last year and beat him with Jameis last year when Sam was our quarterback. So you never know. There's winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys could absolutely finish second in that division. I do expect Tampa Bay to run away with it, but there's definitely room for upside. But the key metrics that we're going to be looking out for on the Panthers side of the ball is, can they improve that third down conversion rate, the early down success rate, and overall offensive efficiency? That's what's going to keep Matt Rhule down there in Charlotte at the end of the day. He's got to get beyond 5 wins again. So
And for Tampa Bay, yeah, Tampa Bay again. It's going to go as far as Brady goes, and he seems pretty indestructible so far. I gotta believe you're right. I think they're a favorite to win the division again. Yeah, I think they're gonna. I don't know what I give maybe 12 wins. What is that now? 12 and
be
5.
12 and
12
5.
and
Yep.
5.
Yep. 12
I
and
could
5.
see. Yeah, maybe I go 12 and 5 for the Bucs. Maybe we get them. We get them for a game. We'll take them down for a game, and and then we'll see. Maybe we finish 1-2 in the division, and we sneak in the wild card. Because again, I just think if the Panthers comes down to I think it comes down to Christian McCaffrey. I think as much there's so much talk about who's going to play quarterback, but Christian McCaffrey hasn't been healthy for 2 years, and we watched him win games in 2019, making Kyle Allen look like the Panthers should sign him for a long-term contract, people were saying, because Christian McCaffrey was winning games single-handedly. So I think that's what the Panthers season comes down to, is him staying healthy and, just getting consistency at quarterback. I just need Matt Rhule to make this decision quicker than later. I don't want this QB competition. We're still not sure. You got to stick and make a decision, and it's got to be soon, or else the circus is going to continue to grow and it's just going to get out of hand. That's the last thing we need. We don't need a quarterback circus. We need to stick with somebody, preferably Baker, and they need to do it relatively soon, in my opinion, just to kind of get that out there. So
100% agree on that point. They've
Yeah.
got to find some consistency, just some stabilization and some upside. The last couple of signings were there to quote unquote stabilize it, but there was no upside and they didn't
Right.
even stabilize it. So I think, to your point, like, that's exactly what's got to happen. And honestly, that's going to take us home here on this episode of the Around the League podcast. Tommy, man, I really appreciate you hopping on here and joining us. You folks know where you can find him, at Panther Up Pod. You can check him out at rosterupmedia.com/Panther Up. Tommy, any final words for the people here?
No, thanks, Cody. Maybe just a shout out to my most underrated wide receiver in the league, in my opinion, DJ Moore. Look out for a huge year, folks. Huge year from DJ. Doesn't get enough talk. I had to mention him once. So yeah, on that note, let's keep pounding. Hopefully a big season for the Panthers. And yeah, love to talk anytime here.
Absolutely. Thanks for jumping on, man. And DJ Moore is someone I could spend another 25